Hello and welcome to AXSChat. I'm really pleased today to be welcoming Sarah Lee to AXSChat. Sarah is doing her pre-med at the moment. She's got a bachelor's degree already from Virginia Commonwealth University and has been studying in the field of political science, but now she's looking to become a doctor. But while she's studying, she's also working with Deborah at Ruh Global Communications, and she's working a lot in the field and talking about her conditions and also, well, let you explain, Sarah, because I'm getting tongue-tied, as is my wont. So welcome, and can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you. Well, I graduated, as you said, from Virginia Commonwealth University in Interdisciplinary Studies. So basically, I got to choose 3 topics I was interested in. I chose anthropology, history, and political science. And then I took a gap year after I graduated and took some time off, was a cook for a while, traveled for some time, and then decided to go back to school for pre-med. And so now I'm doing that. I'm also working for Deborah, which has been an amazing experience. I'm actually pretty unfamiliar with the disability field because I have an invisible disability. It's just been a very interesting experience, and I'm incredibly grateful to not only work for Deborah, but to also be on the show. Thank you, guys.
Oh, you're welcome. So possibly can you explain to us what your invisible disability is? Mine's dyslexia, of course, but yes, if you let us know.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I've had seizures since I was about 7. So basically, that is unlike I guess like a clonic-tonic grand mal seizure where there's convulsions. I kind of I call them like blackouts, basically, whereas I become unconscious, but my body is kind of on this like autopilot. And so I guess it happens for about 30 seconds. How many times a day is variant. No medication has really worked for me, but it's so subtle that I've kind of just like adapted my way through it. It's hard to notice really, but for me it's like there's like a gap in time that I'll notice where I just don't know what just happened, and I'll be like, oh, that's that. I just blacked out, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. And really often with hidden disabilities, people don't really understand that it can impact on your life. So what was it for you that really was the first point where you felt that it was impacting? Because you're saying the effects are quite subtle, and same for me with dyslexia, but equally at one point it hit a point where it had a significant impact. So what was that moment for you?
Absolutely, and I'm sure you kind of had this experience too. It was I think it really started to happen in school. I think it really hit me when I first started getting them when I was 7. It was just like being in class, and I have this one distinct memory where I had to go back to my seat in 2nd grade, and I just was in someone else's seat, like snapped out of it, and everyone was kind of like teasing me about it, and I think that was kind of when I realized something was up.
Okay. Deborah, I know you have a question.
Yeah, you know what? I really am proud to have Sarah working. She's concentrating, you know, on her school and everything. So she's only working a few hours a week for us. But you really impressed me, Sarah, with the way that you really poured yourself into this community and really have a very empowering voice. And one thing that I see over and over is that even though the story you just, you know, gave, you know, that happening in 2nd grade and the kids making fun of you, which was what kids do in 2nd grade.
Yeah.
But unfortunately. But there are other impacts. I know that you've had, for example, you can't drive, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and it's more. It's kind of strange because the rules are very lax, surprisingly. I technically, I think I could get my license, but I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. It's just for my own safety and as well as everyone else's.
Right. And it's hard. It's hard to not be able to drive, certainly in certain parts of the United States. I know you live in downtown Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, so you ride your bike a lot, but there's not super good public transportation in our area.
No.
So, yeah, so how has that gotten in the way?
It's actually, well, more so as a problem in Sterling, Virginia, which is where my mom lives and where I mostly grew up, and there was absolutely no public transportation to speak of. So, and my mom was a single mom, so there's definitely, I just didn't really have access to like after school activities and things like that. It's just like, it was a very sprawly suburban area. And actually moving to Richmond and being able to ride a bike has opened up so many doors for me. I've been able to have a job and do, just pretty much do anything that I want. It's pretty, it's something I dread, going back to visit my mom and being stuck in the house all day. So it actually has it. I'm lucky that I can ride my bike, and it's really given me access to a lot of things.
Yeah, we have a program about technology and where technology is going, and driverless cars, and how it has such promise for so many of us. But someone like you, I mean, that will be really, really a powerful. Powerful.
That's really exciting.
And I'm going to turn the mic over to a question.
No, I was just moving on. You were mentioning about developments in technology, so I will jump into that. So if you look to the technology that we see today and to the developments that we are having, almost happening at a fast pace, what type of technologies are most exciting for you, that you see that can still be applied and improve people's lives over the next coming years?
I think we're making huge steps in AI as well as like voice recognition. I think that's really promising. And voice recognition to me is especially exciting because it just transcends a lot of different uses. And then a slightly more obscure technology that I recently found out about that is more specific to epilepsy was Optogenetics. Basically, I might be butchering this explanation, but basically you take a photosensitive cell, and like a gene for a photosensitive cell, and you inject it into a neuron, and you can stimulate and unstimulate a neuron's firing by shining a light on it. And through this technology, they've been able to completely change the paradigm in which they understood opson seizures. So that was a recent discovery that was really compelling and interesting to me.
Do you often do a lot of research in trying to understand and know more about technology and trends? If yes, is there a particular sites or particular sources that you like more to go, that you are using more frequently?
Well, I have access to current research from published papers because I'm a student, so I'll usually use that. But as far as like an aggregating site that I think that most people have access to, I usually go to science.com or nature.com. Those are good websites. And the New York Times also has is a great publication for developments in tech. Otherwise, I have to admit, I'm not the most tech savvy, so I don't know the most about that. However, those publications I do check rather regularly.
So Sarah, what a question that I have is something that we were talking about briefly before we started the interview, but something that I've noticed by a lot of the young people that I get the pleasure to work with and with, there seems to be a shift happening with a lot of the young people that are being more accepting of the multidimensional individual. I mean, as human beings, we talk about this a lot. You know, Antonio's wife, she has a disability and chronic pain and things like that. Neil has really run up against dyslexia, and you know, dyslexia has kicked his butt a few times. And the same with me. I struggle with ADHD and depression, but it's really, I think, one thing that we talk about a lot on AXSChat is that disability is just a normal part of life. You know, being sick and disease, and unfortunately those things are part of life as well. They're just part of the human experience. And so I'm actually very hopeful for the way the young people a little bit more accepting than some cultures have been in the past. Have you seen that when people realize that in the first place, you know, do your friends realize, do your professors, do the other students realize that you have seizures, and do they treat you differently when they realize it? And do you find that people are a little bit more accepting? And to be honest, you might not even realize that, you know, because you're going to be looking through a different lens than I am. But I just am very hopeful about what I'm seeing from the younger generation being a little more accepting about, you know, people are different from them.
Well, there's a lot of layers to that. I would definitely agree with you that I'm definitely, well, I have nothing to compare it to really, but I think that my generation is very accepting of people as multidimensional beings, as you said. Disability is a part of life, and I mean, there is that CDC statistic that I always go back to, that 1 in 5 people have a disability of some kind. So, I mean, that is like a huge part of our population. And I think with access to information like that, not only the flood of information that my generation has because of the internet, it's also widening our social circles. And so our ability to take in these floods of information, process it, as just like is so exponentially larger than generations before. So I think my generation has just become naturally better at rapid information processing. And so with that in mind, I think people are more and more exposed to different walks of life, different kinds of people. And for me in my own life, I'm not sure if I'm just especially privileged to have this open group of people around me, I guess, and perhaps I live in a bubble, but for me, I've never really experienced people treating me differently after they find out. Definitely, I think if anything, it often creates this bridge of me allowing myself to be vulnerable with them, and then it breaks down this wall, and they perhaps feel a little closer to me even after that. So, yeah, I think this hope and optimism that you have is definitely, in my opinion, true. But also, you know, I'm not. But also, we can't necessarily make generalizations about everyone. I'm sure there's still. Yeah, there's still a lot of misunderstanding, and I mean, I personally didn't even realize that I had a disability until I was filling out paperwork at the DMV. I still think there's a lot to do in terms of awareness. And a point that I've been mulling over recently is just this concept of biodiversity. I think people have this idea that biodiversity is positive, that, you know, we need as many different kinds of organisms in our world for there to be like a productive ecosystem. But for some reason, there's this, people don't really apply that idea to human beings. You know, in their head, they don't really think of the positive benefits of diversity in human beings physiologically. And so I think that disability is definitely in a more profound sense part of life. Like it's important, it's necessary for the continuation of our species. But anyways, I'm just rattling off.
No, fine. I've actually got a bit of a follow-up, because I know that you've done a lot of traveling around the world. So we've talked about the intergenerational differences, but when you were traveling around, did you notice cultural differences? Because we certainly see that even within Europe, that attitudes to how people deal with disability vary significantly depending on, you know, nationality and culture. And I think there's you've got in the UK, for example, we tend to follow the medical, not the medical model, the social model of disability. In other parts of Europe, it's the medical model, and so how people get addressed and how disability gets addressed changes within cultures. Is that something that you experienced while you were traveling?
To a certain degree. I think with the kind of traveling I did, it was very cursory and surface. I didn't really get to be completely immersed in the culture. I didn't spend much time in a lot of places, but things that I immediately observed were definitely infrastructure. I mean, and that's a reflection of a culture. And
Yes.
I think pretty much anywhere except for the US, I found that there was better infrastructure for people with disabilities. I mean, public transportation immediately. That was more cost effective, more efficient. It was just more reliable because more people used it. And I think obviously that has to do with the space as well. It's smaller countries, there's going to be better public transportation. But that was something that was very glaringly apparent to me. However, in South Korea, where I also spent some time during my travels, just because my father lives there and I have the most experience there, there is definitely a cultural difference that I observed. I was able to observe. There's more physical resources, I suppose, like built into the infrastructure, but the social attitude towards disability is very different to ours. And I would say, I hate to use this word, but behind, I guess, because there's this hyper competitiveness. People who have disabilities in South Korea have a lot harder time accessing resources and sometimes finding acceptance from even their own families. So that's a major difference I observed.
Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Deborah in a second, but I'm interested, and I wonder, and this is not something you can necessarily answer, whether or not the Paralympics in Pyeongchang will have some kind of positive impact upon those kind of attitudes. Deborah, you had another question.
I did. I want to make sure I wasn't muted. Sarah, I know that you are going to be pre-med, and I was wondering, your experience with these seizures have impacted you, impacted that decision. I mean, walking this, are there some ties to why you want to become move into medicine?
Definitely. I think it has given me more of a, or not more so, but just really emphasizing the patient's experience, and then also less about my epilepsy. What's motivated me to go into medicine is just feeling like I have just observing how healthcare is and hearing about my friends' experiences and families' experiences with doctors that they don't really appreciate, you know, and feeling like I could bring a more humanist approach to it, just because I have a non-traditional major, and I just think that my life has been a bit non-traditional. So yeah, I guess epilepsy definitely, that experience has contributed to my pursuing medicine. Definitely started my interest, I think.
Okay.
So what kind of medicine are you thinking about pursuing?
Most likely rural medicine. I'd like to. I'm just very concerned about people's access to healthcare, and my major was mostly focused on Latin America. But the more I studied, the more I thought about what I could do in my country. I realized there's still so much to be done in rural areas in the States before I were to ever begin thinking about other countries. So I'd really like to go into rural medicine.
So
Good answer.
you think you are looking at, you know, trying to observe all the world around you, and you make the decision that, no, you are going to start. Do you think that your decision is also somehow related with trying to fight some level of exclusion that sometimes people face because of their distance from, you know, from cities? They don't have access to doctors. Is that was something that has a weight in your decision?
Oh, absolutely. I was more, when I was in school, I think I was more on the policy side, and I guess the administrative, bureaucratic side with taking classes about how to run nonprofits and taking courses on international policy. And initially, I actually wanted to go to law school, but then I just thought that this was a more hands-on approach to be able to try to heal somebody with your hands and to bring these resources, these human resources, into these areas. And so I decided to change my course, and absolutely it has to do with access and observing people not being able to get to hospitals or clinics in time, and suffering in a way that's absolutely preventable.
I think that we've had quite a lot of conversations on AXSChat where people, you know, have talked about hospitals, whilst they're a place for healing, have also got significant accessibility issues, and there are also, we keep hearing significant attitudinal issues amongst medical staff that don't necessarily give the sort of, they don't treat patients as human beings. They treat them as symptoms, and I think that maybe that's going to change with the generations too. And I'm sure that you're going into the profession with that mindset. But what sort of things do you think could change in the sort of medical setting to make hospitals and medicine in general more user friendly for patients? Because from what we hear and from our own experiences, it's not a particularly user friendly experience.
That's a yeah, that's a really big question. Well, I think it's hard because in the past couple of months, I've especially been quite pessimistic about the state of our healthcare in the U.S. Hint, hint. But I think it has to, if we are to make it truly accessible, inclusive, and a humanistic experience of truly coming to this place of healing, I think it's a paradigm shift that needs to happen, that the whole institution of healthcare would need to be completely restructured. it is very effective in what it is designed to do. It's not, I don't think healthcare has been designed to treat people necessarily as human beings. I mean, it's terrible to say, it sounds terrible to say, because every person who goes into healthcare has the best of intentions. They often forego their youth to pursue this profession with the ideal of helping people. So I hope everyone gives their healthcare providers a little bit of wiggle room with that. It's a very stressful, terrifying profession, but I think healthcare systems have been have been designed to treat disease and to not see people as human beings, but to see them as carriers of disease. And I think they've been really, this model has been really effective in treating disease, but it lacks in a humanistic approach, a holistic approach to treating people as individuals. And I think as of now, the best thing that we can do is raise awareness so that individual healthcare providers can improve their care and take a moment to treat people as individuals. I think that's where we need to start.
Great answer. So, Deborah, I think you had a comment, didn't you?
Yeah. As I listened to you talk about this, and I know that you had a really long dialogue on Human Potential at Work, our Facebook group, talking about some of the proposed changes that our president is making to the healthcare and stuff. And it was, it's interesting to me because it seems like a lot of the problems that we have in the United States and in the world right now, they all touch each other. So just looking at it from the U.S. lens, we have 74 million Americans that are baby boomers now that are over the age of 55. So as we age, some of us are going to lose our ability to drive. And the infrastructure in our country is not prepared for that. We don't have the public transportation in place. I'm hoping, once again, some of this technology will solve some of these problems, but back to, the medical care. And like you said, I thought that was a good point that you said, Sarah, that, a lot of the people that go into medicine, they do give their youth, field, they're studying, they study for a really, really long time, and they're interns, and they do give their youth. That's an interesting perspective. But I think that a lot of these problems, the aging in the world, the lack of public transportation, even the climate control issues, the lack of good health care for everyone that needs it. In a country like the United States that is supposed to be developed, not everyone has health care. And the ability, good health care, I see a lot of people going to concierge services in the United States, which is wonderful and great, and really looking at integrative functional medicine, but that isn't available to everyone. So things like that, it scares me because it feels like we're making sure we all are included. And so I just wanted to make that comment. I know that Antonio had made a comment in the message window that in Spain, medical students need to pass a soft skills test. We need to humanize medicine, and we need to really think about all these moving parts. The rural Americans, they're not having the same access, but some of the urban areas aren't as well. So I'm optimistic about young people like you that really care, and that you've learned a lot from your own walk and journey, are interested in making a difference. Recently we're having a lot of conversations in the United States about climate control and whether or not the United States needs to be involved in these conversations. So I just think there's a lot of parallels to all of this, all these different things.
No,
if you wanted to comment on, go ahead, Antonio.
No, I want to come. No, often we see Silicon Valley world, or sometimes even New York, or sometimes people say, "Oh, let's create the next app, the next big thing that is going to change the world." It's not going to change the world. It's going to change the world for the founders. Somebody is going to get richer by creating the next big app. They don't know. So sometimes we need to reframe what means changing the world and making a better world, and we cannot keep associating that to the Silicon Valley gospel. We need to make that real.
Yeah, I think that we need to be looking at solving problems rather than getting technology and trying to match that to a problem. So it's been a habit of the technology industry as a whole to get excited about technology and then see how you can apply that, rather than thinking, well, where are the issues? Let's go and look for the solution. So if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I think that you're right. Again, apps don't solve everything, and we saw one of our former guests, Judge Ginger Wren, posting about this earlier this week, and I think it's true. It was we need a different approach, and I particularly like the approach that the Royal College of Art and the Hamlin Centre take, which is looking at problems and trying to find solutions to problems rather than
What's the next
taking the tech forward.
Yeah.
Right. There was a comment made by one of the scientists in the United States. It was a few years ago, but he said that the greatest minds in the United States were focused on the app so that people can click on something instead of using those best minds to really make a difference in the world. And so it's exciting to see someone like you, Sarah, and many others like you that are, saying, all right, how do I add real value to people's lives rather than just creating an app? And I love apps, but I think it's obvious now that we have these major problems that are only going to get worse as so much of society is aging. And as we age, of course, more of us are going to need medical help, and we're going to need transportation and healthcare and all those different things. So it's I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that maybe we could make a difference with your generation. Sarah taking the lead. So we, do you want to make any final comments? I think we're almost at the end of our half hour, but let us turn the floor back over to you, Sarah.
I actually just want to go back to what Antonio said. I think putting more emphasis on finding solutions to small problems, getting our hands dirty, and really understanding things on a smaller scale, and instead of, absolutely great, technology is great, but like going back to this idea of solving small problems effectively instead of constantly trying to push for the next new paradigm shift in tech and apps. And I think that you need to have a balance of both. I think that's a really great point.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I agree. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being on the program today. We are looking forward to watching your career and how you make a difference in the world. And I think, I think that what we're realizing as a world is that these technology and there's so many, the internet and social media is so wonderful, but it's almost like what happened in the United States when there's rumors that we were going to defund programs like Meals on Wheels. And I think the thing that was exciting, even with the climate change that we just, our president is going to back out of the climate change. You see a lot of individual leaders, a lot of individuals standing up and saying, okay, how can I make a difference to this conversation? Instead of looking for our political leaders to solve the problems, we're all going to solve the problems. So thank you for the world, Sarah, and we're excited to see what you'll do with your career. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.